I don't think you can call what Pat Narduzzi has done with Pitt's offense this season or this offseason a left turn. It's not really a sharp turn or a left turn. He didn't just go like 90 degrees from going straight to going that way. It's like, it's not even a U-turn. It's not a U-turn for sure because it's not going backward. It's a totally different road. It's a different mode of transportation altogether. He's gone from, one type of vehicle to another. I don't even know if it is just completely different. It's such an upheaval. It's such a change that I don't even really, I'm still struggling, as you can tell, to put it into words. But after talking to Cade Bell and Pat Narduzzi yesterday, a few things came to light, and a few things became a little bit clearer, a little more crystallized about what Pitt's offense is going to be in 2024 and what that tells us about Pat Narduzzi, what he thinks of the last 2 years on offense, and where he sees this program headed. We got a lot to talk about Pitt offense and the most important hire of Narduzzi's career on today's Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, welcome to the Thursday edition of the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com is the website. Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the place to get all of our Pitt sports coverage, Pitt football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are hanging out on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com talking about Pitt sports. They're talking about Cade Bell. They're talking about Pitt basketball. They're talking about recruiting. They're talking about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. If you're looking for the best online community of Pitt sports fans, you'll find it on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You can get all the Pitt sports coverage and the content, and you can get the conversation in the community. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And of course, right here, we have our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's a place we put all of our video content, these daily Morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday. Our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night at 8 p.m., although last night we turned it into a post-game show, which we do after every road Pitt basketball game. We go live to talk about the game right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Everybody gets in the comment section. We get a lot of back and forth with your comments and your questions. It's a lot of fun. And we do that after every road game, so you tune in for that. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of our live streams or any of the video content we post here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you can turn on notifications and you'll get an alert sent to your phone whenever we go live or whenever we post new content. It's a good way to stay in touch and make sure you don't miss anything. And also, while you're at it, like this video, because we always like that. Had a good example of all the video content yesterday at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We had, videos of 4 transfers who spoke to the media. Sincere Lee, CJ Lee, I guess he goes by, the wide receiver from Western Carolina. Desmond Reed, the running back from Western Carolina. Raphael Williams, who apparently goes by Poppy. He a wide receiver from San Diego State, but previously of Western Carolina. And then Damon Lynham, cornerback who did not play at Western Carolina. He played at Nebraska, but they're all transferring to Pitt this offseason. They're all on campus, and they all met the media yesterday. We had videos of all of those on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And not that those guys aren't important, but let's say most notably, we had videos of the introductory press conference with Cade Bell, as well as a press conference with Pat Narduzzi. There was a lot going on in the South Side yesterday. We have video of it all right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Our focus is on Cade Bell. We could sit here and talk about CJ Lee and Desmond Reed and Damon Lynham and Raphael Williams, but let's be honest, you and I have been waiting a long time to hear from Cade Bell. Finally, after getting hired in the second week of December, or whenever it was, he was available to the media. And I understand why he wasn't available to the media up until this point. He was out recruiting, which is a pretty important job for a college coach. But now the recruiting contact period is over. He's off the road. He's in the office, and we could talk to him. And so we talked to Cade Bell for about 20 minutes yesterday. We talked to Pat Narduzzi for about 25 or 26 minutes yesterday. And both were very enlightening conversations. on a lot of levels. I mean, Narduzzi covered a lot of ground. They both covered a lot of conversation, a lot of topics. But the most notable thing, the most interesting thing, the thing that we all went there to find out about is what is Pitt's offense going to look like? Now, I understand that a press conference in February is not going to give you a full picture of what the offense will be in September. But to hear Cade Bell talk for the first time, I mean, we've all seen the tweets, we've seen the stats, we know what Western Carolina's offense did and what Cade Bell talks about with, play fast, score faster, and all of this stuff. But to actually hear him talk about it for a little while, it was very enlightening, I thought. And if you haven't gotten a chance to check it out, we've got not just the video on right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, but we've got a full transcript of what he said, all 20 minutes, right there at Panther-Lair.com. I think the full transcript, questions and answers, worked out to something like 3,800 words. I mean, it was a long form article of a transcript of an interview, and I think it was all worth reading. And it was all interesting to note and consider. And the biggest thing I took away from it, it's not necessarily a new revelation, but the biggest thing I took away from our conversation with Cade Bell, the biggest thing I took away from our conversation with Pat Narduzzi, is that this is a hard shift away from anything we've seen at Pitt since Narduzzi took over in 2015. That's the expectation. That's what Cade Bell is coming in to do, and that's what Pat Narduzzi ostensibly hired him to do, is something very, very different from anything they've done in the past. Now, there's a lot of different angles and caveats and tentacles from that, and one is that talk is one thing, right? So, I mean, we can hear them talk about snapping the ball. According to, I forget if it was Desmond Reed, it was one of the guys who played at Western Carolina, said their goal was to try and snap it every 7 to 10 seconds, which is absurdly fast. It's one thing to talk about that, and it's another to get in the actual games, playing against actual opponents and other, opposing defenses, players with a pulse who are trying to stop you, and going out and actually executing at that kind of a pace. Now, of course, Cade Bell said they're not going to play 7 to 10 seconds every snap. They'll pick and choose how they use tempo. They want to be able to deploy that tempo whenever it's needed. He said, if we want to go as fast as Tennessee, we can do that. I believe I have the ability to do that. And will have the ability to do that, he said. And then there are times when just the illusion of that tempo will give them an advantage as well. And on the surface, taking a very surface level, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think what he talks about as far as pushing the tempo on a defense can force that defense to not play as quickly because they're stopping to, they're sort of rushing. They're not able to keep up because they're trying to think, and it'll slow a defense down and give you more opportunities to make plays. I mean, look, we know that going with tempo can be a winning recipe. And we've seen Tennessee use it to great success over the last couple of years under Josh Heupel and obviously UCF before that. And we've certainly seen what tempo has done to Pitt's defense at points over the last few years. And so it's a good idea, but being able to execute it and being able to do it with players who haven't done it before. And yes, C.J. Lee and Desmond Reed and Raphael Williams all did it before, but everybody else hasn't done it before. The quarterbacks haven't done it before. The offensive line hasn't done it before. The other receivers and running backs haven't done it before. And so getting them all to be able to do it is another thing altogether. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it's even unlikely that they will be able to pull it off. Just that it's one thing to say it and it's another to do it. So we'll see how they're able to do it. So, I mean, that's the first thing I say about it. But the other thing that I just couldn't get past is how different this is for Pat Narduzzi. And, I've always been one that, I go back, I think about coaching changes, head coaches, right? And I go back and I think about, Dave Wanstead to, that little run, right? And how each sort of head coaching hire seemed to be informed by the hire that was made before it. You know what I mean? Well, it was Dave Wanstead, and when they got rid of Dave Wanstead, the goal was to find someone who was doing something more modern. They could go out and win, could bring a more modern offense, a more modern approach to college football. And so, obviously, Mike Haywood was not it, but I mean, there were early efforts on Al Golden. There were conversations with Dana Holgorsen. Mike Haywood was a college football coach who was having success in college football, and then ultimately they end up with Todd Graham after that. But they're all college coaches, guys who had made their name as college coaches. They go through 1 year of Todd Graham and he leaves, and they need to find someone who is not just a college coach. They want to keep that part of it. They felt like that was an improvement from what Dave Wanstead was. But they also want to get someone who is maybe a little more grounded, someone who fits a little bit better culturally, someone who is at least gives the outward appearance of a good person. They wanted a different sort of personality to lead the program, and they end up with Paul Chryst. And so each hire, you kind of saw what drove the hire and what was appealing about the hire, because they sort of filled in the gaps of what was there before. So then you fast forward, and I feel like the same thing, you can sort of apply the same thinking or the same metrics to Pat Narduzzi's offensive coordinator hires, right? So he starts off with Jim Chaney. That last 1 year, Chaney leaves, goes back to the SEC, and Narduzzi replaces him with Matt Canada. Well, what was the draw there? What was the feeling there? And I think what Narduzzi wanted was someone he had worked with before. He had experience with Matt Canada, he had familiarity with Matt Canada, he had a relationship with Matt Canada, and he didn't have that with Jim Chaney. I think once he started working with Chaney, it wasn't a great working relationship. So he wanted someone he knew he could work with. So he brings in Matt Canada. Obviously, the offense has a lot of success in 2016, but Canada leaves for LSU after 1 year. So Narduzzi goes back on the hunt. And what does he look for? He looks for a coach who could not only, call a good offense and carry over some of the, I think in misguided fashion, try to carry over some of the things from Canada's offense, but he also wants someone who he believes will stay in place for a little while, will stick around, have a little stability and continuity with the offensive coordinator position after going through 2 coordinators in his first 2 years. So he hires Sean Watson, who he's pretty sure is not going to leave to go anywhere else. And he's right. Watson doesn't go anywhere until Narduzzi fires him after the 2018 season. He goes back on the hunt, and he starts looking for a new offensive coordinator. What's he looking for now? And he said it explicitly. He wanted someone who could help develop the quarterbacks, specifically Kenny Pickett, and call and operate a better passing game. He felt like the passing game was what was missing from the team in 2018. It's what ultimately let them down. They needed a better passing game, and they needed quarterback development, so he wanted someone who could do that. You get 3 years of Mark Whipple then, ultimately culminating with an ACC championship, a Heisman Trophy finalist run for Kenny Pickett, a Biletnikoff Award for Jordan Addison, and the best Pitt football season in 40 years. Whipple leaves. Not necessarily fired, not necessarily quit, certainly not retired because he went on to work at Nebraska, but Whipple leaves. Probably through mutual decision. They were both probably ready to be done with each other. And so he goes back on the market, and he's looking for an offensive coordinator. What's he looking for now? He's looking for a coordinator who can call a balanced offense. He doesn't want to abandon the passing game. He doesn't want it to go back to 2017 and 18 and be the Sean Watson offense, but he does want to have more of an effective running game, not to carry the load of the offense, but to complement the passing game. He wants to carry over some elements of the passing game from 2021, obviously with the new quarterback, knowing that he's going to have a step back at that position, no matter who they brought in. He wants more of a complementary, balanced offense. And so he goes and gets somebody who has at various points operated a balanced offense. Most notably in 2009 at Pitt, it's Frank Cignetti. It doesn't go well. As a matter of fact, it goes horrible. And they lose multiple games over the course of 2 seasons due to bad offense. And so he goes back looking again. And what's he looking for this time? And we're now up to the present. Right? And if you look, in each situation, the biggest flaws with the previous OC and offense informed what was hired next and who was hired next and what they were hired to do. And so we look at Cade Bell. And we look at Cade Bell as a drastic departure from every other coach that Narduzzi has hired. Nobody else he has hired has been as young as Cade Bell. Nobody, and I'm talking about offensive coordinators here, nobody else he has hired has emphasized tempo the way that Cade Bell has. Matt Canada would push tempo. Mark Whipple liked to run no-huddle stuff. Nobody has talked about trying to run tempo the way Cade Bell has with a balanced offense, not just throwing it 6,000 times, but balancing the offense as much as possible. It's a drastic departure from what Narduzzi has tended toward in almost every way over the last 9 years. A complete departure. And you go back and forth about what a defensive coordinator looks for in his offensive, or I shouldn't say a defensive coordinator, what a defensive head coach, a defensive-minded head coach, a former DC looks for in his offensive coordinator. And I think there's two schools of thought. One could be you want an offensive coordinator who's going to do everything they can to keep your defense on the sidelines. I think there's a bit of that in Narduzzi. But two, and I think just as notable or just as relevant, probably just as important, you want, if I'm a defensive-minded head coach, I want to hire the offensive coordinator who runs a system that would drive me nuts. I want to hire the guy who, if I was facing him, would keep me up at night. I would lose sleep trying to figure out how to stop this offense. That's what I would do. And I think maybe for the first time, I think Narduzzi would look back and say Sean Watson, Matt Canada, Frank Signetti. These guys, called a good running game. And as a defensive coordinator, that would kill me if we were just getting, giving up the run like that. Although I think Narduzzi would never make the assumption that his defense would ever allow that kind of, any kind of rushing success. But I think maybe for the first time or more than any other time, Narduzzi truly looked for the guy who would just get under his skin if he was facing him and run an offense that would just drive him nuts. And I think that was a big motivating factor. Maybe the biggest of all, though. Maybe the biggest motivation for this drastic departure, maybe the biggest driver for what led Narduzzi to make this kind of hire and go for this kind of offense is because, and this is my own speculation here, and Narduzzi may or may not ever acknowledge it. He may say I'm an idiot and I have no idea what I'm talking about. That's fine. But I truly believe Pat Narduzzi looked at the last 2 years and said, we lost, let's count, games lost due to offense in the last 2 seasons. Games that would have been won with, mildly effective offense. Georgia Tech, certainly in 2022. Louisville in 2022. That's 2 right there. Let's even stop there. Let's not even say Tennessee. Let's not say North Carolina. Just 2 games. Against not very good opponents where your offense was so bad it cost you the game. And that's the difference between 8-4 in the regular season and 10-2. And potentially an ACC championship spot. A spot in the game. So that's 2. And you go to last year. How many games did the offense cost them last year? Let's set Cincinnati aside for a second because there were some defensive issues there. But West Virginia, yep, absolutely. Wake Forest, yeah. Syracuse, yeah. I know, their defense couldn't stop Dan Villari. Look at how bad their offense was. Look at the turnovers. Look at the mistakes. Look at the issues coming out of halftime. Syracuse. Duke. Yeah. That's just 4. What am I forgetting? Am I forgetting some? You could make it, Florida State, maybe. Defense, better offense could have gotten something happening there. Oh, Virginia Tech. That was a good one. That's like 5. I won't even count Florida State. They're the best team in the country. Maybe you could have scored with them. Your defense certainly played a valiant effort. And if you could have scored a little bit more, maybe that changes the course of the game. And you know what? Let's throw Cincinnati in there. Anywhere from 4 to 6 wins wasted last year, missed opportunities last year of a 3-9 season that could have been anywhere from 7-5 to 9-3. So over the course of 2 years, bad offense cost this team anywhere from 6 to 8 wins. If you waste 6 to 8 winnable opportunities over the course of 2 seasons, that's the path to losing your job. It is. And I'm not even going to go down the road of hot seats or anything like that. But if I'm Pat Narduzzi, I'm looking at this program and saying, we wasted 6 to 8 games over the last 2 seasons with bad offense. And I've now put myself in a position where I'm coming off a 3-9 season and I need things to go right. And I can't just hope to win games by a touchdown. I can't hope to win games 28-21 or 24-17 or 24-13 or something like that. I've got to go out and score. I need an offensive coordinator who can score. And I think there are going to be points this season where Pat Narduzzi is going to have to fight against, he's going to have to bite his tongue, where he's getting annoyed about how the offense is playing and how they're attacking and how they're using tempo and all those things. But he's going to have to hold it. because this is what he hired Cade Bell to do. Cade Bell had a quote yesterday about I want to find it because it's a really good quote. I thought I had it here. Yeah. If you're not trying to separate from people, if you're just trying to barely win, if you're not trying to have confidence and be aggressive and try to step on people's necks, as I would say, bad things can sometimes happen. Maybe one of the lessons that Pat Narduzzi learned from the last 2 seasons is that when you're not trying to pull away, bad things can sometimes happen. And so he went and hired a coach that he believes gives him a chance to pull away, gives him a chance to have an explosive offense, gives him a chance to have an offense-first team. Maybe he realized that 3 years ago he had an offensive first team, the most offensive first team, tied for the most offensive first team of his time at Pitt, and it ended up winning an ACC championship. And that might be the way to go. This is the most important hire of the Pat Narduzzi era. Absolutely. Because if he gets this wrong, if this doesn't work, if Cade Bell doesn't work or Narduzzi steps in and doesn't let Bell do what he wants to do and it ends up blowing up in his face and they have 2 bad seasons, well, on a long enough timeline, everyone's life expectancy drops to 0, right? And I think Pat Narduzzi recognizes that. And I think he recognizes that this program needed a jolt with the offense. And they got it. I mean, they seemed like they got it. As we sit here, it's how many months away from 7 months away from the season? Seems like they got the jolt they needed. Or at least the guy who's talking about bringing the jolt they needed. We'll see how it all works out. A lot of interesting stuff, though, and certainly stuff on the quarterback and a lot more. I think we'll have plenty of things to talk about from Cade Bell's press conference and Pat Narduzzi's press conference over the next couple of weeks. I'm sure we'll be referencing back to those a bunch of times, so you can stay tuned for all of that. But thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate it. Don't forget, we'll have the Morning Pitt mailbag tomorrow. So if you want to get questions in, there's a thread on the Between Fifth and Forbes message board at Panther-Lair.com. You can go check that out and post your questions, and we'll answer as many as we can in the mailbag tomorrow. So like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. It's Thursday. We made it to the end, almost to the end of the week. So enjoy your Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.